What separates the men from the boys in survival is the ability to go out and produce sustainable food. Anybody can go out and get shelter, water, and fire and sustain themselves in the short term in a survival setting. But if you want to do it long term and you want to be able to thrive instead of just survive and get by, you've got to have a sustainable food source. And the best way to do that is using survival trapping methods, whether it be with a modern trap such as a Conibear or whittling sticks together and using bushcraft style traps. All of them will work, but the modern traps are much more efficient than the bushcraft style traps will ever be. The average efficiency of a modern trap is about 25 to 30%, whereas with a survival, bushcraft style trap, you're looking at about a 5% return. So it's a numbers game with the primitive traps. So if you're going to go out and set Paiute deadfalls, for instance, you're going to want to set about 20 of them in order to assure your success. And when you get really good at building these traps, you can build a Paiute deadfall in anywhere from 10 to 15 minutes once you've got the materials harvested. So you can spend an afternoon knocking out 20 traps, and you can go out and set those and check them every 24 hours or so. And what I really love about the Conibear trap is that it is so efficient. They're very cheap. For a 120 style Conibear trap, you're looking at about $6 to $8. For a 220, you're looking at about $10 to $12. And for a 330, you're looking at spending about $20 to $25. And they work in a wilderness setting as well as an urban setting. One of the things I like to tell my prepper friends is that a good insurance policy for making sure that you've got meat in a, end of the world as we know it type scenario is buying a couple of cases of Conibears. If I have 1 or 2 dozen Conibears, I can absolutely feed a family of 4 even in an urban setting or a wilderness setting. So it's a great investment for the money, extremely efficient, and it's definitely a purchase you should consider for your own kind of basic self-reliance. The Conibear trap can be set up in a multitude of different areas for all different sizes of game. They come in as small as a 50 or 60 size Conibear all the way upwards of a 600, and that is essentially the jaw size of the trap. And the number with the Conibear trap is associated with the pounds per square inch that it hits when it hits the animal on the back of the neck. It's also a very humane trap because it kills them almost instantly, snaps their neck, and you're sure to put food on the table. In this set, we're going to go after a beaver with a 330, and we're using a 330 for demonstration purposes just because it's a little bit more humane. I would never carry a 330 in a wilderness setting, but I definitely carry a couple of 120s as well as 220s in my backpack for extended trips. You can easily attach them, to the outside of a MOLLE backpack or throw them inside of a backpack, and they go up very quickly. I can set a Conibear in about 5 to 10 minutes, and I can go out and set it in an area that has a high amount of sign. And when you're setting traps, you tend to want to set in transition areas, areas that animals are moving from their home, getting to their food source. And then also I like to trap the animals' actual dens. The upside of using a Conibear is I can find an active animal den, and I can place a Conibear in front of all the exits of that den. And I'm almost about, if there's an animal in there, I'm about 75, upwards of 90% chance of getting that animal. You can get anything as small as a squirrel, upwards of a 50, 60 pound beaver. I've caught some very large game with these, even with the 220. And say you did catch a 40, 50 pound beaver. That's enough food for a single person to survive on for, around a week. So it is a great idea to go for larger game if you have the ability and the tools to do so, because you're going to be spending that time setting these traps regardless. Why not go for a larger meat source versus a smaller meat source? I would rather go for quality instead of quantity. So in this set, we found a beaver run that's dug out in between 2 ponds and has a lot of tracks leading to and from the run, and we took the 330 Conibear, set it in the run, and we staked it off with 3 stakes on both sides, and then we took the chain and tied that off to a tree in case the animal manages to buck up out of the stakes and drag your trap into the water. Now, about 95% of the time, they're going to kill the animal right off the bat, but on rare occasion, you might find one that's got a little bit more will to live and will buck your trap loose. So make sure that you stake it down really well. As far as bait sources are concerned, you can use all types of bait for Conibear traps. Let's say you're setting over a den or something like that. I tend to put a little bit of bait in front of the trap to give them an appetizer, and then I'll throw some bait inside the den as kind of the main course to, you know, appeal to them to want to go through your trap, because a lot of different types of animals are finicky, and they may see that trap, or they may, you know, smell your scent on that trap and may not want to go through unless there's a good reward on the other side for them. This is a 120 Conibear, and I like the 120 over the 110 because it has dual springs. A lot of people out there recommend the 110, and the 120, in my opinion, is more efficient. It hits a little bit harder, and I can stake it on both sides, whereas with a 110, I can only stake it off on one side, which makes it much more difficult to secure. It's only going to cost you a couple of dollars more to get a 120, and they weigh about the same weight, and you can easily carry anywhere of 4 to 6 in these in a backpack and not really rack up a whole lot of extra weight. This probably only weighs about 1.5 pounds. It'll work for you time and time again. They really never go bad. And if you do decide to buy some, you want to properly prepare them. So the first thing that you've got to do when getting them new is you want to take like some Dawn soap or something similar and wash all the oils off of them and make sure that you get all the soap off there real good. And then you want to take and set it outside in the elements for anywhere from 2 weeks upwards of 4 weeks so that you can get a rust coating on there. You can also buy commercial dyes, or if you want to do it kind of primitively, you can take something like black walnut and take the hulls of the black walnut, set it in a bucket, let it set for a couple of weeks, and let those dyes seep out into the water. And then you can take your traps and dip it in the black walnuts in order to give it a good color. It's not absolutely necessary. You don't have to dye your traps, but it just makes it a little bit more efficient. The 120s can be set by hand. It's fairly easy to do, but if you decide to carry the 220s, you'll need to use the paracord method in order to set them, unless you're just incredibly strong. And it's much easier to just set them, and it's safer to do it with the paracord. I don't recommend carrying setters. They're heavy, bulky, they don't pack very well, and you can do it just as easily with a piece of paracord as you can with those heavy setters. With the trigger system on the Conibears, you tend to have 2 different sensitivity settings. I prefer to set it a little bit more sensitive, and that would be the notch that isn't quite as deep. And then you'll have a trigger here that will lock into it, and you'll place the dog in between the notch here, and you'll want to, when they come from the factory, they'll be closer together. I tend to like to flare these out so that it covers a wider space in the trap. That way, if you get a slightly smaller animal, it can't squeeze to one side or the other.